This is Lightning Power Lunch with Dave Mishkin and Greg Linnelli on Lightning Radio.
I got the best power play guy in the league in Kucherov, so they kind of play on him, and there's always going to be a guy open, some seems like, so just try to find that, and obviously we're nice to get two on the back door there.
Yeah, it's nice to get some goals. Haven't gone in for us as of late, last probably 6 or 7 games. But it was nice to get some goals. Obviously giving up too many chances, though, on the PK. There's been a dead chance. If Fazzy doesn't make a great save there, it could be a different game. So I like the in-zone, but just the entries and some of the turnovers we got to clean up.
Big-time players making big-time plays. I mean, that first goal is a couple of really, really good players. And then, a little bit of a, kind of a dirty goal, the second one with, the shot rebound, around the net type goals. The ones those are playoff type goals that go in. And then, we get the PP one. And so I think I looked up the shot clock and it was like 11-2 and then, or 11-1 and all of a sudden it was 11-5 and we had a 3-0 lead. So, we buried our chances we got and then the goalie did the rest for us.
Man, I think I said to you, partner, and it is Power Lunch on Lightning Radio, I felt like that was a special teams goaltender type win last night against the Rangers, and I still probably feel that way even a few hours after the game. But 2 points is 2 points. We were talking off the air. It potentially sets up a very interesting game tomorrow against Toronto, especially if the Leafs lose tonight against the Panthers. Regardless, it's still going to be, I think, a big game for teams who have already clinched, if you can have such a thing this late in the season. But you needed to win last night to make that game tomorrow even more relevant. And while they weren't perfect, for sure, and the Rangers pushed, they looked dangerous, no doubt, that's kind of one of those games where you're used to seeing the Lightning pick up points. Remember, you and I, we were discussing in January, they were playing pretty well, but they were losing, they weren't picking up points, and they had trouble scoring. I felt like last night, I don't want to say it was vintage Tampa Bay, but it certainly reminded me of these Lightning teams that have taken the other team's best punches at times in a game, and you wake up and you read the box score and you say, yeah, they found a way to get 2 points, or they found a way to get a point. And that's what I think's made this team so unique over the years. But I felt like last night was a pretty good example of bend but don't break.
Yeah.
And your goaltender really was, I thought, magnificent in that game.
Yeah, they did bend and they didn't break, thanks in large part to Vasilevsky. You threw a lot out there at the beginning. I think it's all interesting stuff that we can get into, kind of this homestand that's going to start with a key game against Toronto. Toronto plays Florida tonight. The game last night, how the Lightning were able to win it. The road trip as a whole. I thought actually the two best defensive games the Lightning had were the first 2 games. Coop was kind of asked that to kind of assess the road trip. Ed Encina asked him. And he actually, in so many words, he said, the Ottawa game was our best game. He's like, I loved our game in Ottawa. That was the one game they lost in regulation. Games 3 and 4, the games at Buffalo and at the Rangers, they were not as good defensively as they were in the first 2. Understanding. Ottawa got a couple of chances off the rush. Islanders had a couple of chances off the rush. It's going to happen. If you look at the quality of the chances, though, and the number of chances they gave up in those first 2 games and compare it to the last 2 games, they gave up a lot more against the Sabres and against the Rangers. But let's start with the game tonight, Toronto and the Panthers. So this is a 4-game homestand the Lightning have coming up. I don't know that I've ever seen this before, Greg. The schedule makers are helping the Lightning here because all 4 of the games the Lightning have at home, they will be playing a team that played in Sunrise the night before. I don't know that I've ever seen that, where in a 4-game homestand, you're catching all 4 teams in the second half of a back-to-back, and one of those teams is Florida. Florida plays game 81 at home on whatever it is. They play the Lightning on Tuesday the 15th. So they play at home Monday the 14th, and then they finish the regular season the next night. The Lightning aren't playing the night before, and that's the other thing. The Lightning are not having any back-to-backs. So this game tonight, Toronto and Florida, it's kind of like good news, bad news, right? One team is going to get 2 points and one team isn't. To me, it's almost good news. And the reason for that is understanding the Lightning still have to take care of business in the games they have left, and they have 5 games left in the regular season. The Lightning players have talked about the significance of getting home ice. They've almost talked about that as being more significant than finishing in first. Now, if you finish in first, you're going to get home ice. Right. Finishing in first, theoretically, would allow you to avoid a matchup in the first round against Toronto or Florida, but Ottawa is only 2 points back of Florida. So Ottawa could move into the top 3. And in all likelihood, they would be supplanting the Panthers, who have had just a rash of injuries. I saw their lineup in their last game against Detroit. You couldn't believe the number of players they have out, and that includes Ekblad, who's serving his suspension. But they didn't have Kachuk, they didn't have Barkov, they didn't have Bennett, they didn't have Reinhart, they didn't have Forsling. I mean, it was nuts how many players are out. I don't think they had Kulikov. Anyway, presumably most of these players are going to be coming back soon. So this game tonight, even if it goes to overtime, that may help the Lightning because it'll help them in terms of the tiebreak. So if the Panthers win, it's kind of the scenario you laid out, the Lightning will be even in games with Toronto, only 2 points back. And they play the Leafs on Wednesday. A regulation win would pull them even and give them the first tiebreaker. So that is a positive, I would say. What if the Leafs win? Well, if the Leafs win, then they move 4 points ahead of the Lightning. But that also means that the Panthers have burned a game and they are still 4 points back of the Lightning, and they're going to be running out of real estate to get ahead of the Lightning to win the tiebreak. So if we reach that point, a 4-point gap is really a 5-point gap because the Panthers have to overtake the Lightning. We're not there yet. I think the Lightning have, what is their advantage in the regulation win? They have 4 more regulation wins than the Panthers, and the Panthers only have 5 games left. So you can do the math. If they don't win tonight, they're going to have to win out in regulation to get tied with the Lightning in those 2 categories. And then, we'll go down the list and see if the Lightning have an advantage in a subsequent tiebreaker. So look, I mean, the Lightning can be spectators tonight, but they will be catching a Toronto team that's playing the second half of a back-to-back. And no matter who wins the game tonight, the Lightning will have an opportunity either to solidify their hold even more on second place, which would give them home ice in the first round, or potentially tie Toronto and keep their hopes very much alive for first place. Anyway, that's where things stand. I believe I had a question from Jim, and I kind of answered it. I saw it after we were off the air asking about these 4 back-to-backs that the Lightning's opponents have, and I have to be honest, I've never seen anything like that before. So Lightning have to take care of business, and they're facing different teams. Detroit may still be in the playoff race. Detroit has a huge game tonight at Montreal, 6 points back. They need that game. If they win it, though, 4 points back of the second wild card, and they're kind of jumping ahead of some team. Rangers has stumbled, Columbus has stumbled, etc. Buffalo has posed problems for the Lightning based on how they can score. So, and Toronto is a very, very good team. Even if the Leafs are playing the second half of a back-to-back, they've handled the Lightning pretty well in the 3 regular season meetings so far this year. So, anyway, we can get into the game tomorrow morning, and we'll know what happened, obviously, tonight between the Leafs and Panthers. The game last night, you were right. That was a special teams win for the Lightning and a goaltending win for the Lightning. It was not a great defensive performance for the Lightning. They gave up too many chances. Their penalty kill is starting to leak a little oil here, Greg. It's 3 games in a row now. They've allowed a power play goal. They didn't lose the special teams battle last night because they went 3 for 4 themselves. And the Rangers looked very, very good. So this was one of those games where the Rangers power play has been abysmal. Shockingly. Like when we talk about how are the Rangers where they are, it's not only this, but you look at their previous teams, and last year's team won the President's Trophy, like they have been basically a top 5 power play. With this iteration of Zibanejad and Kreider and Fox and Panarin and Trocheck, I mean, that's the unit, right? Now, JT Miller is out there. I think right now he's replaced Kreider, who's in a little bit of he's not having a great year, but it's perplexing how the power play can be as poor as it is. They came into last night's game 27th in the NHL, and they had scored 1 power play goal in their previous 11 games.
Yeah.
That is shocking. So they were very committed to turning their power play around, and their power play looked great. They scored on one of their chances, and they had 9 shots on the other 2 chances with a boatload of scoring chances. But we're talking about the Lightning's penalty kill. So the Lightning's penalty kill, it's now 3 games in a row they've given up a goal, and you've heard me say this many, many times. If you gave me my pick, which needs to be at least decent and preferably excellent in the playoffs, power play or penalty kill, I will take penalty kill every single time.
You've been very consistent with that
Yeah,
over the years.
because it's harder to overcome a leaky penalty kill. It is possible to overcome a dried up power play. You can find other ways to score. But if you're spotting the other team a goal or two, yeah, your power play might help you, but that's putting you in a tough spot. So we'll see if the Lightning can kind of get back to where they've been shorthanded moving forward here. Hagel and Sorelli continue to be dangerous. I mean, Hagel hit the post right before.
What do you think the issue is? Because you wouldn't say it's the goaltending. Because the
goaltending was fantastic last night. Yeah.
Is it just bad luck? Bad breaks?
Well, last night it wasn't just one power play. I mean, when you look at, so like the Ottawa game, Ottawa didn't have a lot of chances. How many chances did Ottawa have? I actually have it up here. Well, they had 3 chances. They scored on 1. That was a weird play because Vasilevsky had a poke check to keep the puck away from a dangerous area, and it got reversed, and it was a really good shot from Jake Sanderson. The Buffalo power play goal, it was just a meat and potatoes, right? A shot from the point. Sabres got net front, Tuck deflects it. It leads to a tough save, and the Lightning had a little bit of a breakdown in front. But the other penalty kills the Lightning had in both of those games were not as subpar as the 2 that they had last night where the Rangers didn't score, because they didn't score primarily because Vasilevsky stopped them. It wasn't that the penalty kill was preventing chances. 9 shots. I mean, and you can go back and look. You can look at the play-by-play to see where those shots came from. The distance. Very, very tough saves. So, look, some of it might have been the Rangers were due. I mean, a power play with that caliber of players on it shouldn't be struggling that much, and they looked very, very good last night. So I'm also giving credit to what the Rangers were throwing at them. But we'll see. I mean, I think that the 3 goals that have gone in have all been a little bit different. I mean, that one last night went in off Zibanejad's skate. So it was a little bit of a lucky bounce, but he kind of knew where the puck was. I mean, it has to be a kicking motion. He didn't have a kicking motion. He just angled his skate. Smart player, but he got open in front, right? Like nobody's around him to erase him, basically. So that was a little bit of a problem area. I think the Rangers also generated chances, though, 5-on-5, and what Braden Point talked about. I mean, the Lightning giving up a shorthanded breakaway to Mika Zibanejad, up 3-1. That was, so the Lightning had back-to-back power plays in the third period. They scored in the second of those to go up 4-1, but it was the first of those, giving up a shorthanded breakaway, and it took a phenomenal save from Vasilevsky. He got a piece of it with his glove. Zibanejad was going up, hit the glove, hit the crossbar, stayed out. That would have made it 3-2 with a fair amount of time left. Things might have looked very different. But other than that, this is what Braden Point was talking about. In zone, the Lightning were very, very good on the power play. So, I mean, I kind of threw a lot at you here. We can get into what the Lightning did well in the power play because it was a little bit of a different look. We can get into like what they didn't do well defensively beyond the penalty kill, but I'll kind of pass it back to you, and because I did a lot of talking there. And
no, that's fine.
Thoughts.
I mean, I always like to get your pulse of the game because you're obviously in the heat of the moment and you're seeing things develop.
The urgency level for one team was higher than it was for the other team, and I think that was baked into the cake. So you can't be shocked that the Rangers pressed the attack the way that they did.
No,
some of that was circumstantial based on standings position.
I mean, the other thing, I think that's exactly it. And I always think in these games you have to take that into consideration as to why maybe a team is playing well or maybe why a team has the edge. Again, I looked at this game as, okay, so the Lightning took the Rangers' biggest and most impactful punches, particularly during that second period, and they came away with 2 points. Now, why did they come away with 2 points? Well, their goaltender had a lot to say in that. And, let's not sugarcoat things. Andrei Vasilevsky was dynamite. If you want to say special teams, which I would say, yes, that was a big reason why the Lightning were able to overcome maybe the Rangers' play to a degree, was the fact that their star players on the power play performed at a pretty high level. I mean, Braden Point now has 41 goals on the season.
Yeah.
I know we took some questions about the Lightning's alignment on the power play and maybe the ups and downs of the power play a bit this year, but I think, you mentioned meat and potatoes.
That was the Buffalo goal.
The Buffalo goal.
Yeah.
I mean, I felt like, the Lightning's, some of those goals were basically just kind of going to the net, whacking away. Braden Point certainly with one, when you factor in what he was able to do when he was able to tuck his one goal underneath Shesterkin into the net. So I felt like while the Lightning didn't have their A game, I think they had their survival game at a pretty high level. They were able to withstand some moments where things got a little uncomfortable. And because they had certain players at certain positions make some plays during that time, and conversely, we didn't see that from the Rangers, quite frankly.
Yeah.
I mean, Zibanejad, had, what was it, the one breakaway where Vasi makes a save, hits the crossbar. They had some good looks. What was that little flurry at the end of the first period where I think they ended up taking that last shot off, correct?
Yeah.
When it was
It
like
was the
kind
end
of
of the
juggled to
second
Vasi.
period.
End of the second period, but I mean,
Yeah.
that was a good save. I mean,
Yeah,
like,
on JT Miller. That was
Yeah.
during a power play. So
it was, so
if it had been half a second longer, the period, or had the shot come half a second earlier, that would have been a 10th save that he made on the Rangers power play.
I mean, either way, you could
chances.
see the pressure he was under. But again, coming back to kind of just meat and potatoes, how about Yanni Gourde's goal?
Yeah.
I mean, that reminded me of a guy playing some hoops, diving for a loose ball. He just extends, and that was just a want. Yanni Gourde beat his man and was able to get a goal there. Honestly, that was probably one. If I'm Shesterkin in that moment, I probably need to make that save. And it was a good goal, but you need to make that save.
Yeah.
The guy's on this belly. It was a backhand, right? On his
Right.
belly.
It was a weird play, though, because the shot was blocked down low by Carson Soucy, and then Soucy couldn't get it, and Gourde did. So Shesterkin is kind of like, where's the puck? Uh-oh.
Right.
And he's trying to react. It got through him. So there were a couple things that happened on the power play for the Lightning and in the first period, because it wasn't only that they went 3 for 4 in the power play, which helped. They also scored 3 goals in a 1 minute 45-second span in the first period. That also helped. So beating the dead drum, or beating the drum, dead. The drum will not make any noise. I've been hitting it so many times over the years. The shift after a goal. I asked Gonsalves about it post game because he was out on the ice for the shift after the first goal, and the Rangers didn't handle it well at all. And they've been dominating the game. Shots were actually 12-1 because they added one. Coop said, I looked up at the scoreboard. It was 11-1. Well, there was a 12th shot in there. They added it after the first period. Rangers were dominating possession. They had an advantage in scoring chances. They had a really good power play they didn't score on. And then they go on the PK, and they give up a goal off the rush to Point and Kucherov. All right, so it's 1-0. What happens on the next shift? They didn't handle it well at all. Lightning brought it in, buzzed. Rangers had a chance to clear. I forget who the defenseman was, but he didn't make a very strong play in the puck, and Hedman was able to hold it in, and he kind of touched it to Gonsalves, who took the shot. Soucy and Gourde are at the top of the crease. Soucy blocks the shot, but the puck comes to Gourde, and he slides it in. So now it's 2-0, and those goals came, 36 seconds apart. I mean, those are killer goals to allow. It's a killer goal when you score and then give up a goal in the next shift, but it is a tough pill to swallow when you give up a goal and then give up a goal in the next shift. And then off the center ice faceoff, Sam Carrick takes a terrible penalty, cross-checking Cirelli. The Lightning had just scored in the power play. They scored again, and now you're putting them on the power play for a second time. And that was more of the in-zone power play goal, which I will get to what they did to shift things around. But 3 goals in a minute 45 seconds. That wasn't your ball game because the Rangers came out really well in the second period. But when you look at, like, how did the Lightning win? Yeah, it was special teams, it was goaltending, but it was those 3 quick goals. The Rangers were not able to stop the bleeding in that short window. And it's rare to see that, certainly. But that's why we talk about the important shift after a goal. And basically the Lightning scored essentially 2 of their goals came on the shift after a goal. So a 0-0 game became 3-0 in a minute 45. That's a huge, huge part of why the Lightning were able to win. So the power play. We had a fan suggest this. I forget the fan. It may have been Anthony, who is very in the weeds on the power play. If it was Anthony, congratulations. If it wasn't Anthony, I apologize to the fan who mentioned this. They asked, like, all right, they need a righty at the left circle if Cooch is going to be at the right circle. Why not put Braden Point back at the left circle and put Oliver Bjorkstrand in the bumper? Whereas earlier it had been reversed. Bjorkstrand had been at the left circle and Point had been in the bumper. Well, last night, and actually in one of the other games where they had Bjorkstrand out there, because I think in some of the other games on the road trip, we saw Hagel out there, and then sometimes Kucherov went to the left, and Hagel was at the Kucherov spot. So they tried different things, but they hadn't scored. They hadn't scored on the road trip. They had gone 4 games without a goal on the power play. One of the games they didn't have a power play chance, but they scored on a delayed penalty call. That was the home game against the Islanders. But on the road trip, they had not scored on the power play. They had tried different things. One of the things they tried, and then they stuck with it last night, was this shifting of Bjorkstrand and Point. So Point's now at the left circle. Bjorkstrand is in the bumper. Point does not have the one-timer of a Stamkos. We've talked about that. But Point is very smart. And Point can find openings on the ice. That's how he's able to score from the bumper, because that's the most dangerous spot. So how is Braden Point getting open, right, to score from the bumper time and time again throughout his career, where he's played mostly in the power play in that spot? So what happened on both goals, Point's at the left circle, and the Rangers lose track of him, and he goes to the back post. He doesn't need a one-timer. He can do a tuck-in. He can stuff it in.
Yeah.
So in the first one, Shesterkin got over, stopped it, but he was not in a position, like, unless he could get it was his stick hand that was close, unless he could get his stick hand on the puck or somehow get it under the pad, the puck was loose. So Point took a second shot, and it slid under the pad and went across the goal line. The second Braden Point goal from the exact same spot, Shesterkin couldn't get over in time. So how did that open up? It opened up because Kucherov at the right circle kind of curled more to the middle, and Gensel kind of came up a little bit from the goal line, extended more to the bottom of the circle, which set up that it was almost like a triangle, right, where we're leaving one side open. But Kucherov is like if the triangle's point, the top of the triangle is in the slot, and then we're thinking of the other 2 sides at either side of the net, the Lightning went from the middle of the ice to down low on one side and then across to the other side. And they actually tried it right before then, and Shesterkin got his stick on the puck. That's when it hit Zibanejad. Remember, he got hit in the face and got injured on the same power play. They were trying that play again, and Shesterkin got a piece of the puck with his stick. That's why it deflected up and hit Zibanejad. So this was a different look. And look, if teams are going to like focus on that might open up Bjorkstrand in the middle too. So it was a different look. It worked pretty well, particularly in zone. And, predictably, teams will adjust. Teams have video. They're very well coached. Yep. And they're going to try and game plan to stop this. And they'll be aware of Point sneaking to the back post. Okay. So maybe that gets taken away by Toronto, their next opponent, but maybe something else opens up. We'll see. The key is, though, if Kucherov is going to be at the right circle, the best formation is to have a righty in the bumper and a righty at the left circle. And for a while, the Lightning were doing that with Radish out there too, a righty at the point. So Kucherov could pass to 3 different places for a one-timer. Right now they have Hedman out there, which is fine. Hedman hit the post on that same power play late third. So, he can bomb away as well. So we'll see. We'll see how it moves forward here, and if this is kind of the unit that they're going to go into the playoffs with. I like having Bjorkstrand on the power play, and honestly, he's probably more comfortable being in the middle than at the left circle. The one-timer is not as, first of all, you're closer to the net, and second of all, you have more net to shoot at when you're in the middle, right? As opposed to at the dot.
Right. I think that all is exactly what we saw, and I think for the Rangers, I to make the Lightning's game and outcome even more impressive last night this was a game that the Rangers basically needed to have.
Mm-hmm. And their penalty kills have been good this year. Their power play has struggled. Their penalty kill came in 8th in the NHL.
So it's not like the Lightning
making an appearance for our video fans. She's like, pay attention to me.
She's like, why can't you?
Mommy went out on an errand. Somebody pay attention to me. You
want
to be on Power Lunch, Stella? Look at her big nose. I'm even wearing the burner.
Oh, you
shirt.
got look at that. I like that. What's that say, Dad? What does that say?
Burner Dad. Yeah. He's like, you are Burner Dad. Pay attention to me.
I love it.
I'm not worried about the fact that you're. Steve is having flashbacks to when she actually knocked the cord out of the camera in the studio. I hope that's not going to be a problem today. Anyway.
It is what it is.
It is what it is.
And we move forward. I think we got a bunch of questions coming in. Yeah. I just thought it was an impressive win with all of those things factored in. That the Rangers basically, is it safe to say their season's on the line? Was on the line?
Now they probably do need to win out. Yeah. They have no head-to-heads with Montreal, so they're going to have to find a different way to make up ground and hope they get help. That's what it boils down to. They're going to hope to get help from Detroit tonight, but Detroit is in the mix too. Like Detroit could get into that second wild card. It was a tough loss for the Rangers. One they really needed. And frankly, they did a lot of good things, but to an extent they got goalied and their special teams let them down. And the one goal that we didn't talk about on the power play, which was not really a conventional power play goal because it was off the rush, it turned into a 2-on-1 for Point and Kucherov. But if you watch the replay, Greg, when they enter the offensive zone, it's a 2-on-2. And I had to watch the replay a couple of times. I'm like, what is going on there? Kucherov just basically walks around. Fox was up in the play. So who was that player that was out for the Rangers? I think it was Carrick. Because Fox was up in the play, although it might have been Braden Schneider. So for some reason, they had 2 righties out there on D. So I'd have to go back and watch the replay. But Fox was up in the play. So he was thinking about a shorthanded attack. He tried to backhand the puck in front, and Bjorkstrand blocked it. The Lightning reversed it quickly. But it's a 2-on-2. Yeah. This is a defendable play for the Rangers. And Kucherov just walked around the guy who was tasked with defending him, and it turned into a 2-on-1. He had a slam dunker. Yeah. That was just not well executed at all by the Rangers. And the goal, to me, was very avoidable. There's no reason a 2-on-2 entering the zone should all of a sudden become a 2-on-1. The guy who was defending Point has a little bit of a step, but he's on an angle. I think that guy's in okay shape. But it was the other guy. Just let Kucherov walk right around him. So that was how the Lightning got their first goal.
Makes some sense. Let's get to some questions here, partner, as we kind of move forward at Bolts Radio. Tampa Bay on X, do you think 12-6 should be the one so the top 6 don't have to be overworked?
Well, Tampa Bay, I'm not sure the top 6 is getting overworked. They had a fair number of... I'm just looking at the ice time yesterday. I may be proven wrong because I haven't really looked at it yet. So Kucherov played 20 minutes and 28 seconds. That is probably on par with his average, whether the Lightning are going 11-7 or 12-6, and he had 4 minutes and 18 seconds of power play time, which is on the high end. It is. So he was the highest forward. They've actually, what they've been able to do, Tampa Bay, is sometimes when you have the 12 and 6, you see that fourth line is in single-digit minutes. And what I'm noticing is that the 11 forwards, it's not that, like, Gergensons and Glendening get penalty kill time. So their minutes are going to go up a little bit. But, pick a guy who doesn't play special teams. Gonsalves, for example. Gage was at 12:38 last night. So basically the 11 forwards are all, it's not that the top guys are getting more minutes because there's not a 12th forward. It's more that the 11 forwards are divvying up the minutes. Now, the Lightning are going to have to kind of assess how much of a workload they want their top guys to get if they enter a playoff series 11-7, and those guys are up around like 22, 23 minutes, or you have like a multiple overtime game, right? I mean, then that might tip the balance. But as it's currently kind of configured, I'd have to go back and look at the average ice time per game. I don't think that anyone in the top 6 is necessarily getting overtaxed any more than they would be if the Lightning had a different lineup. Cirelli and Hagel play a lot. They're in the top 6. They play penalty kill. Usually Hagel sometimes on power play 1. Power play 2 plays less, but when power play 2 is out there, they are out there right now. So they're going to play a fair amount, but I don't think that it's any more than what we've seen all year. And they like the 7 defensemen. They've worked the 7 defensemen in a way that everybody is getting minutes, and you're not overtaxing the Hedmans and the McDonoughs, right? I mean, again, looking at their minutes, Victor played 23:02. McDonough was under 20 minutes last night, 19:58. Those are very manageable minutes.
I'm going to give you a thought. I mentioned it yesterday. That 12-6, if that's the lineup they choose to go to more often than not, perhaps in the playoffs, it's going to hinge on the personnel that you have.
Mm-hmm.
And specifically, that may hinge on how you feel about Isaac Howard.
Yeah.
It
By the way, I did a little research on Puckpedia yesterday, so I'll tell you what I learned.
Did you
Go
dig?
ahead.
Were you doing a little digging?
It wasn't that hard to dig. I mean, they made it. There was a little question mark button that I clicked, and like, here's the formula to calculate how much, how to calculate a daily cap hit, basically, for a player. So do you want me to tell you what I learned?
I want it. Tell me.
So yes. So what you do is, I'm not going to get into the mechanism behind it. I'm just going to tell you the math. So the math is the player salary divided by 192, which is how many days are in a regular season. That number is the player's daily cap hit. So basically for like an $800,000 annual salary, if you divide that by 192, you're basically coming to about $4,000 a day. Remember, Ed was saying the Lightning have about $8,000 and change in available cap space. That number will actually go up if they don't make any moves because they're accruing a little bit each day. But by that logic, if they signed Isaac Howard tomorrow, they don't have enough cap room because, he would be eating up basically $4,000, assuming he gets a standard entry level deal, right? He'd be eating up about $4,000 a day in the cap, and they only have about 8. So that 8 may go up, but that's probably why they're walking this tightrope. If what I read is what I read, which is certainly what they had on there, if I'm understanding it correctly, there may be some capologists who are not capologists who understand this better than me, but that was the math that was spelled out on Puckpedia. So I did what they said, and that's what I came up with. They may pay Isaac Howard in a contract more than that, in which case, the daily cap it would be a little bit more, but it wouldn't be that much more. I mean, that 800,000 is probably a fair number to use just to see where you're at.
It's fair. It would be, I think, Howard, if you want to burn that year, you want to get in here as soon as possible.
Yeah, I don't think that's a concern though. I think it's more about making the cap work or making the money work within the cap.
Makes sense.
They're tight up against it.
They are.
After having added Gordon Bjorkstrand.
Andrew on Facebook says a lot of Panther players are just resting and healing, according to Paul Maurice.
Yeah. Well, they're mildly banged up. Yeah. They clearly do have the cap space to be able to, put these guys on IR and not LTIR, right?
I mean, the Matthew Tkachuk thing is just...
That is going to be tricky. I mean, didn't we hear that it might be a groin?
Yes. That was Pierre
Yeah.
LeBrun.
I mean, look, he's a gamer, and he played through a lot in 2023 when they lost in the final to Vegas. So he will be ready to go for the start of the playoffs, and that's what the reports are. But being ready to go and being at your utmost effectiveness are two separate things. And again, I will call the groin a lower body injury from the standpoint that it's hard to, like, if you have a broken wrist, you can do the skating and you're getting a closer facsimile to game conditions. When you can't skate hard in your rehab, it's a tougher road back. It just is.
It's like a high ankle sprain because you can't really do what you want to do. You could probably get on the ice. You can... High ankle sprains, you can tighten that lace up as much as possible, but you're probably not stopping and starting.
Mm-hmm.
It's a struggle. Just think of when you're playing, how much push-off you need. And he's a physical player, Dave.
Yeah,
it's not like he's somebody that's just going to be around the perimeter shooting shots from about 55, 60 feet out. He's going to want to go to the net. Part of that is leverage. He takes a lot of cross-checks to the back. You get into some uncomfortable spots, and you need to have a sturdy lower body. That is one of those that'll be interesting to see how it plays out. But that is what we were talking about with these type of tournaments, that Florida is now going to be at a big-time disadvantage. I don't care what they come out and say in terms of he's going to play. The fact that he's been out this long tells you that he is struggling.
Yeah.
And it's not going to get any easier in the playoffs.
In the Ekblad situation, he is not eligible to return until Game 3 of the playoffs. For some reason, I thought that the 20-game suspension was regular season only, so he was going to have 18 left. I thought the next two were the start of next year. That's not the case. Because a playoff game suspension really is more impactful than a regular season game suspension. So I thought they were almost in separate categories, but they're not. And so they gave him the 20 games. Maybe it's automatic if you violate this rule. Maybe not. I don't know. But the last two are playoff games. Where is his game going to be? Now, he can work out. He's not actually injured, but he will have missed significant time trying to get back into the flow of things, assuming they put him in Game 3, which I would assume they will.
Those are two big issues for them. So we will need to be aware of that. We will, and we'll talk about that as things get a little closer. Who knows how things are going to play out? But that's like the equivalent of a Victor Hedman, and it could be Point, it could be Kucherov.
Yeah,
the equivalent of what Kachuk's going through. So
the fan talked about the article, which I read the same article about, like they're kind of holding them out to make sure they're healthy. The other part of that article, and I believe that the Panthers believe this, which they said was, it doesn't really matter to us where we finish. When you've gone to the Cup final and you've won series, plenty of series where you're the lower seed, and you've won the Stanley Cup. Now, they were the higher seed in, I think, 3 of the 4 series last year, if I'm remembering right. They were not the higher seed against the Rangers, though, and they beat the Rangers. Having to be the lower seed is not that big of a deal. So I understand where they're coming from there, because we kind of heard the same thing from the Lightning when they won their 2020 Cup, and then the next year they're kind of like, just get in, and we're fine being the lower seed. So that's kind of how the Panthers are looking at it. Clearly, they are not pushing to try and get second and get home ice as they went through this road trip and rested some guys. Paul Maurice, his basic comment was, I like how we're defending. Pucks are not going in for us right now, but if we're not allowing it to affect our structure, and he's like, that makes me very happy. So right now they almost seem to be like the Lightning were in January, where they're out shooting teams and they're a little bit snake bitten. They lost to Detroit 2-1. They scored a sixth attacker goal, and then after they made it 2-1,
Sure.
I know they hit a post, and then there was like a miraculous save in the closing seconds by, I think Talbot was the goalie for Detroit, where he like lunged over and like took away a puck that looked like it was going into an open net. So that's kind of how it's going right now for Florida. Which, if you're the coach, you're kind of like, all right, I like how the way we're playing is well suited to have success in the playoffs.
And they'll be ready.
Yeah,
There's
they
no
will
question.
be ready.
They'll be ready, but injuries sometimes can be the great equalizer.
Mm-hmm.
Corey on X says, I just wanted to say, I listen to Lightning Radio every night. It usually means staying up till midnight because I live in the UK, but I prefer the radio than the TV streams.
Well, thank you. What's the name there?
Corey?
Bun?
Did I have Corey?
Yeah, well, I have
From
I have
Corey on X. That's what I
Okay.
have. What do you have?
There's there's like stars and some
handle was
other figure
Corey.
there, and Bun.
The handle was
Bunn. Okay. You're looking at something other than me.
I'm ready.
Steve
to
or
text
Jared
Steve
put it
sent me.
up on the screen.
Come
so
on,
that's why.
Jared.
Well,
I can
Corey
yell at him,
or
right?
Bun or Corey Bun or Bun Corey, if you're the same person, thank you. We appreciate the audience.
In the UK, we're everywhere, partner. We're
Yeah.
everywhere. You know, good for you, Corey. If I could send you something, I would. I got to talk to the powers that be. You know what I'm saying? Chris on X says, Elliot Friedman reported he got a note on Isaac Howard which said there is a plan in place and he believes it should happen this year.
It's like somebody passed him a note in the classroom.
Wait,
Hey,
fifth grade?
Elliot,
Here you go.
Can you pass this to Elliot?
Don't
Don't
let
let the
anybody
teacher
see
see it.
Don't let
Well, we had a
anybody see
fan mention that when we had Ed on
Yeah.
yesterday. So, yeah, I mean, Ed kind of said the same thing, that they're working on it.
It
And
sounds
if there
like-
is a plan in
listen.
place, it probably comes down to this money situation. Like, they're going to know when they have the cap space
Listen.
to get him signed and bring him in.
it feels like it's going to happen.
Yeah.
It does. When you have two parties that want to get a deal done, usually it happens.
Mm-hmm.
The other stuff takes care of itself.
Yeah.
The-
Greg, we had
Go
a
ahead.
question from Glenn yesterday, and I put it off. So let's get to that.
Was this about Vesna and Vasi?
Yeah. So
Vasi's better.
well, it's about Hellebuck, not just Sturkin. We didn't hear that last night. The Igor is better. This year's Vesna, this is from Glenn. This year's Vesna will come down to a number of wins and goals against average. Both are team-related stats. Shots against is often overlooked when comparing goalies. If you do the math, you can add 2 or 3 additional goals to Hellebuck's total for the season, which would raise his goals against average slightly. He's saying that because Vasilevsky has faced more shots. Vasi has played 59, now 60. Hellebuck has played 59, now 60. They both played last night. Adding 35 more shots against Hellebuck means you may also conclude that he would have allowed 2 or 3 more goals against. This would raise Hellebuck's goals against average slightly. Just saying, Vasi is closer to Hellebuck in goals against average than it appears on the surface. So, I think, are in agreement that Hellebuck, you and I, Greg, are in agreement that Hellebuck is going to win the Vezina.
He's in a good spot.
He's in a good spot. Now, what Glenn points out, so the stat is save percentage, which they also look at. They look at save percentage. How many shots are you facing? How many goals are you allowing? He is basically saying if the save percentage stays the same for Hellebuck, giving him more shots, giving him the Vasilevsky number of shots means that he's going to allow more goals. I guess there's some logic to that, but where are these shots coming from? Yeah, so Hellebuck's save percentage is 9.24, Vasi is 9.23. So they're comparable. So that's where Glenn is going with that. He's saying, like, give Hellebuck more shots, that's going to raise his goals against. Yeah, maybe. Where are these shots coming from? Are they scoring chances? And also, Hellebuck shouldn't be penalized for having a team that is allowing fewer shots, or to the extent that he is facing fewer shots. So I understand where you're going with that, Glenn. I don't think it changes my opinion about who is going to win the Vezina. I think Hellebuck is going to win the Vezina. And that the stat, again, it's up to date for today. When Glenn wrote it was yesterday. Hellebuck 2.02, Vasi 2.14. I mean, they're both excellent, but
Listen,
I don't know if you have anything to add. I mean, he's making the argument that if you tried to compare it really apples to apples, Hellebuck's numbers would be slightly worse.
I see. Here's how I look at it. Like, Hellebuck's having a great year. That's fine. Give it to him
Yeah.
if you want to. So is Vasi. When it comes down to it, which goaltender do I want? It's going to be that guy. That may be not the way you should be looking at these things, but I've seen enough of Hellebuck. I've seen enough of Vasilevsky. If their numbers are comparable and you want me to start talking about who is the best goaltender in the game, I am going to give it to Andrei Vasilevsky every single time because he is proven it over the long run. He's won more. He's done more. But I understand that's not as simple as these things tend to be. And that's how I would look at it. So am I going to lose sleep over Hellebuck winning this award? No. Do I think these awards sometimes get a little silly? Can I say that word, silly? Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
And good for him.
And look, the GMs vote on the Vezina, so a lot of GMs are probably thinking about what Glenn was bringing up.
Yeah, see, look, even Steve says Vasi has 2 assists, Hellebuck has 1. Come on. That's what I'm talking about.
I just saw a quote, and I vaguely remember when this quote was made. Pat Riley, the great longtime basketball coach in the NBA for the Lakers and then the Heat, and he's been involved with the Heat and management. And he had a comment. I'm probably going to mess it up a little bit because I don't have it in front of me, but this is the gist of it. If I needed one player to take a shot to save a game, I'd pick Michael Jordan. If I needed to pick one player to make a shot to save my life, I'd take Larry Bird. So, I mean, it's kind of this idea about when the stakes are at their absolute highest, who's your guy? Now, some people might disagree with Pat Riley. Jordan was pretty clutch, but that was his assessment. And that kind of illustrates what you're talking about, which is numbers aside, awards aside, when we need it, who are we picking? That's kind of what it goes
and
to.
I know it's really not that award. But I feel like when you have 2 goaltenders who are so close at this point, I mean, it's not like Vasi's numbers are that far off from Hellebuck. I mean, they're basically 1 and 2 in every category, right? I mean, so it's not like it's 1 and 5.
No.
You know, I mean, I think if you're the other thing too, I will say this: I don't know what Winnipeg's expectations were coming into the season, but I will go back and say this is why I think you elevate everybody within the Lightning's organization. I don't think people thought the Lightning would be where they are this time right now at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, you may be right about that. Well, I think you're definitely right about that. Yeah. I'm not sure what the expectations were for Winnipeg.
I don't know what they were.
Winnipeg, remember we had Jack Michaels on. He was like, Winnipeg hasn't made one roster change for the deadline, but they have made one roster change from last year, and last year's team was great defensively, but went out in the first round and gave up a ton of goals to Colorado. So maybe you're like, Winnipeg they're the same, so they are not going to elevate. And they have elevated. They're even better this year. Dallas had gotten close to them. I mean, Winnipeg had a win last night. Dallas was 3 points back, even in games. I was surprised to see that. And Winnipeg ended up winning to go 2 points up. Dallas has a game in hand.
We have a couple other questions. They deal with the game a little bit last night. I wanted to give some time here at the end, you specifically, partner, because you and I were talking about this before the sad news about Greg Millen.
Greg Millen passed away unexpectedly.
And you knew him.
Long time goalie in the NHL. I remember him mostly with the Blues, but I guess he played for a variety of teams. And you remember, I think he was drafted by the Penguins, maybe.
I think he was, yeah.
But I remember him playing with the Blues, and probably for about 30 years, he's been a broadcaster for different Canadian networks. National broadcasts, what we'll call regional broadcasts, even though it would be on a national network, but it would be regional to that area. And he did Ottawa for a number of years, and more recently, but not just recently, like for a number of years, he did Calgary. So he lived in Ontario. He would travel to Alberta to join up with the Flames, and obviously when they came east, he might meet them as well. So when the Lightning saw the Flames in Calgary, it was Kelly Rudy who did the game. But I think Greg Millen did the game when the teams played in Tampa, which was in late February. And Brian Engblom told me the story because he had gotten it on text when we got on the bus last night that, apparently Greg Millen was on a treadmill and he was finished his workout. He went home. He was feeling a little dizzy. He went and got checked out, and nothing seemed awry. So they discharged him, and he went to bed, and he never woke up. So I will tell you that, like, there is a broadcasting, I don't want to say fraternity because we have women as well, fraternity/sorority. It's a community.
Yeah.
And particularly when you've been around for a few years, and I've been very fortunate to have worked for the Lightning since 2002. So most of the people in the league have seen me around for a number of years, and you just get to know them through the years. And Greg Millen and I got to know each other. Probably, I remember he did the Lightning Penguin series, excuse me, in 2011. He was doing the series for the Canadian network, and we really got to know each other during that series. And I remember the Lightning were down 3-1 in that series. They came back and won the series. They won Game 5 8-2. They were so badly outplayed in the first 10 minutes of that first period, though, that it could have been 6-0 Pittsburgh.
Right.
Like, Dwayne Rolison was incredible in that first period. I think the Lightning ended up scoring. It was almost a little bit like last night's game where one team was dominating, and then the Lightning came down and popped in a couple of goals, and they won by blowout. So I remember the first period ended, and I walked out to the common area, and Greg Millen looked at me and was like, what just happened there? Like, he could not believe that Pittsburgh was down in that game because they had just completely dominated. He gave me a smile, and he opened his eyes wide. And, I got to know him pretty well through the years, and it's tragic. I mean, way too soon. I don't know when his birthday was, but he was turning 68 this year. So he either had his birthday or was coming up. And it's a tragic loss. Well, I mean, maybe people in Tampa haven't heard him call games, but he was a very good analyst. He had a great sense of humor. I'm not sure if it came through on the air as much. Generous man, family man, 4 kids. I remember one time he was telling me about his daughter they were all grown, but it's like, she went to LA to try and become an actress. And he's like, it's a mess now. He was like laughing about it. He's like, she gave that up. And like, so you get to know the other people who work in this industry.
I think that's it.
I'm going to miss them.
Yeah. I think you summed up very well. And I think it's like in any profession, when you're around something for that long, as you have been very fortunate, you get to know some of these guys, all of them. They all come in, you talk with all the broadcasters. I mean, even if it's just, you remember we were talking about Mike Lang.
Yeah.
You check in and how are things going? I remember you were talking about this, and look, there aren't a lot of NHL broadcasters, so it is a tight community as much as you can be from that perspective. So I think that's it, and I think anytime you lose a personality like that, it is a sad day.
Yeah, especially late in the season. I mean, I don't know how many Flames games he was doing, but they're still in the mix for the playoffs, and it's really tragic.
He played 14 seasons, partner with the Penguins, the Whalers, the Blues, the Nordiques, the Blackhawks, and the Red Wings.
So he was well-traveled.
Yeah. Got to see everything.
But, I mean, in some ways, his legacy is going to be in the booth as much as it was on the ice. Because he was there.
For sure.
Basically, everybody in Canada at one point or another heard him broadcast games. Because he did some international tournaments, too.
Yeah.
And not everybody, I mean, especially north of the border, but not everybody in Canada necessarily saw him play regularly. But that's not shabby. Would you say 14 years in the NHL?
Yeah.
Very impressive.
Yeah, that is very impressive. Let's see. Sean says, this was from yesterday, partner, before we sign off. What is it about guys like Ovechkin or Stamkos, Matthews, Thompson that allows them to shoot the puck so much faster and more accurately than the average NHL player? What is it exactly that can't be taught when it comes to shooting?
Well, that's beyond my pay grade. Was it Sean who asked that?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, some of it is just natural ability. Why
can
some people swing a golf club and hit the ball farther than others? I mean, it's technique, it's physique. The equipment helps. I mean, Bobby Hull was ripping slap shots over 100 miles an hour with a wooden stick. That's a little harder to do with a wooden stick than with the sticks they have now. But so, like, how hard would Bobby Hull be shooting the puck if he had the equipment and he was in his prime now, right? So, I mean, what made him different than all the other players who played when he was playing? What makes Ovechkin and Stamkos different? And I've talked about this. Their shots, while both capable of doing damage and going in the net, they are different. Like, you talk to goalies, like the shot almost feels different. The Ovechkin shot is like a heavy, powerful shot. As I've said, Stamkos' shot is
Precision.
almost like
Precision.
a BB. It's like, bing,
Yeah.
you know. So
It's almost like Ovechkin shoots it so hard, it really doesn't matter how fine of a shot it is. Because
yeah, he can just blow it
he
by the goalie.
overpowers
He doesn't.
people.
If he gets it to the net and it's on net, it has a chance of going in, even if it's right at the goalie, because that's how hard he shoots it. I mean, I guess if it hits the goalie right in the belly or something, it's not. But if it, it's down around the pad,
Look,
it could leak through.
I think my answer to that, Sean, without getting into the intricacies of the blade, the whip, sticks, take a look at every sport and take a look at every athlete that's played a prominent position. Why does a 6'4" quarterback, to a degree, have a cannon of an arm, and maybe there's another 6'4" quarterback that doesn't have one? One that can throw 60 yards on a rope, and maybe another one doesn't. Same with somebody who's 5'10", that maybe has a tremendous arm, and maybe somebody who is 6'4" is more of a game manager. I think for the most part it is genetics. That's what I'll get into. I think you are born with that ability. Ovechkin is what would you call it, 6'3", 250 at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got some of that oomph behind it, but I think he just was born to shoot a puck.
And they work at it.
They do work at it,
Yeah.
100%.
To
I remember
hone that
watching.
skill.
I remember watching clips of go watch Alexei Kovalev shooting with one stick, like pucks that were heavy, just with his wrist, like at center ice.
Mm-hmm.
That guy could. You talk about he had God-given talent, partner, but he worked at it. So
Yeah.
I think it's a combination. I'd first say you have to have the ability, the God-given ability to do it, and then you got to, harness your craft, so to speak. But
Yeah.
I think you could probably say that for every sport with players individually. Why is one pitcher allowed to throw 96 who might be 5'10", and then another one at 6'4" who's throwing junk?
Yeah.
He just doesn't have the arm. I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah.
It is what it is. And we'll end on that high note. I mean, tomorrow's going to be fun.
Yeah, it will be fun.
We're going to watch tonight, what happens. We'll be keeping an eye on Florida
It
and Toronto.
sounds like for Toronto, Anthony Stolarz has kind of grabbed the net. They've done a rotation. They've had injuries too, I think, in that goaltending position. But, I mean, I thought early in the year it was kind of Joseph Woll's position to lose. Remember, Stolarz backed up Bobrovsky last year. He wasn't even really the guy getting the important games for Florida, even though he was on their cup team. But credit to him. He's played really well. And it sounds like he's going to be the guy in the playoffs. Now, how are they going to split them? I'm sure both guys, I shouldn't say I'm sure. I would expect that each guy is going to get a game in this back-to-back. Who will the Leafs play against the Panthers? If Stolarz is kind of the 1A plus, right? And Woll is the 1A minus, do you use the 1A plus against the team that is farther back to try and build a lead on the Lightning, or do you hold him for the Lightning game? I'm probably overthinking it. The Leafs probably have this mapped out, but whoever is playing tonight for Toronto in net, I would expect would back up the other guy tomorrow.
Okay. Good point. Keep an eye on that.
Yeah.
And we'll break it all down tomorrow. Should be a lot of fun. And appreciate everybody who chimed in today. But Lightning and Leafs tomorrow from Amalie Arena. Partner, great job, as always.
You too.
Love talking hockey.
Talk to you tomorrow.
With you and Steve Versnick and you guys as well. I'm Greg Linnelli. You've been listening to Power Lunch on Lightning Radio.